Hello everybody, welcome to episode 195 of Show Fever. Today we'll be going over chapter 1187 of One Piece entitled The Cause. Now guys, I just gotta tell you beforehand, this chapter was literally one of the best chapters in the entirety of recent One Piece history. It was that good. I just kinda get into it. So we start off with the chapter, we see as Luffy puts the Molly Whopping on Narona Imu himself. And then after that, we see as Imu is not fully out for the count from this, he ultimately quickly recovers and then it ends up sending to Stigma or Omen at Loki and Luffy. Now, ultimately, two of them end up on Loki. And we see here as they actually can communicate. They're kind of sentient, and we see how they discuss that the wound that Loki took was at his near his abdomen. So ultimately, they end up converging there, and then Imu is able to blast Loki with this attack called Vengeful Demon Blade, or I believe it is also called Destructive Demon Blade. It really just depends on the translation of the kanji. But yeah, so we see this, and ultimately Loki goes flying. Now we then swap over to a perspective of all the Straw Hats trying to break the ice that Shuri's in, and we see that none of them are able to break it. We actually get to see a gag as well, where Brook ends up putting his hands on the ice. He's like, it's not even cold, and then Frankie does as well. And then we see as Nami's like, one of us actual humans with actual flesh need to end up touching this ice to see if it's cold or not. But yeah, so we see as Loki comes flying in. And they mention, oh, that's Loki. It must have got beat up pretty bad. And then we see as Ragnar in hammer form ends up falling down and hitting the ice, which allows it to begin to melt, as we know, because Ragnar is the one who creates the ice, and therefore he can break it as well. So we see as it starts to defrost. Then, after that, we see as we go back to the perspective of Imu versus Luffy, or we see as Luffy is mentioning about how the fire is burning him, or the Omen, Stigma, whatever it's called, is still burning him. And he ultimately ends up ripping off his jacket because he's like, yo, this is painful. And his coat ultimately then goes flying away, and Imu tries to blast Luffy, but it ultimately ends up blasting the coat because that's what the stigma is on. And then we see as Luffy prepares to start fighting Imu after this. So then we end up going to the perspective of Zoro and Summers. We see where Summers and Zoro are briefly discussing for a bit while they're on the ship. We see as Zoro's sitting up top, Oro farming, speaking with Summers. They're kind of bantering back and forth, mentioning about how Summers like, yeah, I got 10 to 20 giant kids coming this way. And we then see as they discuss how both of their comrades are in the area trying to get the kids. And Zoro says, well, your homie's not going to be able to be bringing these kids back because he's going to kick the bucket or get killed. And so we then see as Summers launches attack at Zoro, and the big battle for Zoro in this arc begins. We see as the battle between Summers and Zoro then begins. So then we end up going to the perspective of Zaza and all the giant children and Sanji and killing him. We see as Sanji is assessing the situation. So he ultimately ends up coming to Cause 1, where he sees, yo, there's this big giant goddess woman who is capturing the kids. And then we see Cause 2, how he mentions about, how she is capturing the kids, because Cause 1 is that there's a big giant woman wreaking havoc and all that. Then we see Cause 2, Cause 2 is that this giant is a woman, so therefore he cannot attack her. But then we see Cause 3, which is he doesn't like seeing women cry, and the giants are not going to give up on their children. So he has to find a way to fight this battle without fighting Zaza. And ultimately he comes to the conclusion, yo, I'm going to fight killing him instead. So we see as killing him and Sanji kind of commence their fight, and we see Sanji's able to hit a pretty nice kick on killing him, and he's like, "Dang, you're a tough individual." But then he's like, "Well, tough and immortal," because Sanji then comments about how he's gonna beat him, and he's like, "Well, tough and immortal are two different things, buddy." So ultimately, and see as killing him starts to put up a good offensive, and ultimately Sanji mentions about how he knows killing him's weakness. It really depends on which scan you read, because some show Sanji stating that he knows killing him's weak while killing him in others states his weakness. But so his weakness is in fact Conqueror's Haki. And so after this, we end up seeing as Sanji is hit and goes flying pretty far. And then we get a flashback to when Gabon revealed to Zoro, yo, you have Conqueror's Haki. And with this, we see how Sanji's like, yo, do I not have Conqueror's Haki as well? And Gabon's like, well, you don't have it at the moment, but you have the potential, or you have the traits of someone who could. However, you have a faltering of heart. And I believe one of the translations said a pre-inclination to self-defeat. And that is why you cannot use Conqueror's Haki, because you're not a king, and you cannot dedicate yourself fully to Luffy becoming the Pirate King. So, my speculation here, I believe what Sanji is going to have to overcome to become a conqueror is, okay, I don't know if it would necessarily be this, but it's probably going to have to be his I really don't know. Like, I'd say, like, his inclination towards women, but I don't know how that would really keep him back from being a conqueror. Because, like, we've seen that Roger was a bit of a simp, like Sanji is, and he was still a conqueror. So, I don't know. Rox also was as well. So, I guess maybe his willingness to sacrifice himself so easily, because Sanji is highly, I guess, inclined towards sacrificing himself instead of just fighting the fight and not going down. Like, I mean, yeah, he is dedicated to not going down, but he's also more inclined to sacrifice himself. So we've seen he doesn't do this with women time and time again. So maybe he has to sacrifice this self-defeat, this self-sacrifice inclination to then become a conqueror and use conqueror's haki. Now, as you know, I am not a Sanji fan personally. I am a Zoro fan. However, I believe at times like this is when we see, Zoro fans are also Sanji fans, and Sanji fans are also Zoro fans, because I cannot wait. If Sanji gets Conqueror's Haki, I'm gonna love it. Like I said, I'm a Zoro fan. I personally always have Zoro on though, but if Sanji gets Conqueror's Haki, I'm gonna be excited, because anytime a Straw Hat gets Haki, this is a moment in history. Like, what was the last person to get Haki? Usopp with Observation Haki and like Dressrosa, but yeah, I mean, we've seen Straw Hats, and we technically would see Zoro get Conquerors in Elbaf, but I mean, still. So it is just super cool, and I really hope that Sanji is able to overcome this sense of self-defeat or this faltering in his heart so that he can become a conqueror himself. This will be phenomenal. And I mean, it'd be kind of stupid to not have one of the wings of the future Pirate King to be a conqueror. But yeah, so then after this panel, we get kind of a 1.5 page spread of the official statement of Saint Nerona Imu versus Monkey D. Luffy. And we see that Luffy's like, quit calling me by other names. And Imu says, Joy Boy, thou hast appeared finally, or something like that. And then the battle commences. We get, like I said, this like sick like spread of cool fonted words. It looks very metal, declaring the beginning of this battle. And ooh, I cannot wait to see it, because we see Luffy and Gear 5 ready to face off against the final villain of One Piece. Ooh, it's gonna be so peak. I cannot wait for it. I am chomping at the bit. I am so excited. I'm really ready to see if Sanji's gonna get Conqueror's Haki. I'm really ready to see how this battle's gonna go. And honestly, as you know, since I'm a Zoro fan, I cannot wait to see Zoro fight Summers, because it's gonna be a sick fight. And yeah, so it is gonna just be so goated all around. And I know we got a good, probably conclusion here shortly. I know it's gonna be still a while, but I mean, I'd say within the next 20 to 30 chapters will probably be at the end of Elbaf, and I cannot wait to see that. And it really depends how long Oda really decides to stretch out the Imu and Luffy fight. I know it's probably going to be pretty long, but I honestly don't know how long it will be. So I'm just really excited to see that, and to see what Oda has in store for us coming along, because I know it's going to be phenomenal. So yeah, that's all it really was for chapter 1187 of One Piece, and that's all I really have for episode 195 of Show for Review. So thank you very much for watching.